5 weeks and 2 days before being stabbed while acting on the set of a vampire movie, Terrence, 44, sat smoking and talking with one of his new classmates at his new acting class. A few months ago, he had convinced himself that he wanted to get back into acting, so he had joined an acting class. Not this acting class, however. The teacher of the class that he had initially joined had committed suicide after Terrence had only been to 2 classes. So Terrence had looked around for a new class, as presumably had the rest of that class that he had attended for 2 weeks. Luckily, he had found another, with the added surprise that the teacher was a woman who had been one of his fellow students in one of the acting classes of his youth. Hi, I'm Neil A. Yeager, and today I'm reading from my novel, Non-Hollywood. Well, thanks for sticking with me so far. If you haven't already, please subscribe to my YouTube channel. Only 2 more chances to do so. Also, please consider sharing this with your friends. And if you look at the video description file, you'll see more info on me and links to my other projects, which there are a lot of. This is chapter 58, The 40-Something Vampire. Like Terrence, his new teacher hadn't become a star either, but she did seem happy to be teaching this class now. What was it that had made Terrence decide to give this all another go at 44? What had led him to get a gym membership so he could start working off his extra 30 pounds? What had made him look up acting classes? What had made him start perusing the casting notices again? What had made him set an appointment with a photographer and look into costs of photo reproduction and websites on which to post? Boredom, mostly. As had been the plan, his daughter had gone off to college. Now, without the soccer games and basketball and all the other things that keep a stay-at-home dad of a school-aged person busy, he suddenly found he had little to do. Also, according to plan, he and Melanie had managed to buy a house. Now, painting and trimming and all of that initial homeowner stuff had kept him busy for a bit, but that had run its course. Lately, it seemed as though he and Melanie just sat and stared at one another. Not that there were any marital problems, there weren't. They still got along just fine and still loved each other and all of that. It was simply that they had turned into people who had been married for over 20 years. It happens. So he had decided to get back into acting again. The independent film world had changed drastically in the years that he had been gone. The introduction of high-quality digital cameras meant that filmmakers no longer had to spend that ridiculous amount of money on film stock, and as a consequence, there seemed to be a lot more independent productions going on than there had been in Terrence's day. Though it seemed wrong to him that they were still called independent films when there was actually no film involved, it was a welcome sight to see so much going on in the independent world. He had remembered from the days of his youth that small independent films and student films often had difficulty finding middle-aged actors. Now, there were always plenty of 20-something actors willing to do those low-paying or non-paying roles, but not so many older actors around for the roles of their parents and bosses in those small films. Perhaps, now that he was older, he might actually get some opportunities that he hadn't gotten when he was younger. In this, his first class with this group, the theory of more opportunities for middle-aged Terrence seemed already to be proving correct. Within 5 minutes of Terrence walking in the door, the teacher had introduced him to a white-haired man who said that he was directing a film, that he was hoping to cast his film for members of this class, and that, as it happened, he had a role for a man in his 40s. The role was that of a vampire, who is the father of a girl who is still a human. And he, the 40-something vampire, is trying to keep his daughter, who is dating the head vampire, who she doesn't know is a vampire, from being turned into a vampire herself. But he, the 40-something vampire, gets staked by the vampire hunter, who is actually in league with the head vampire and has been tipped off by the aforementioned head vampire, who wants the 40-something vampire out of the way so that he, the head vampire, can turn the girl, the 40-something vampire's daughter, into a vampire. That character synopsis had needed to be repeated to Terrence 3 times before he actually got it. He was told that the part of the daughter had already been cast and was to be played by a new girl in class who everyone thought was a fantastic actress. And they sure would love it if Terrence would consider playing the role of the father vampire. For the first time in his life, Terrence was actually being courted for a role. It felt good.